Then they re-huddled. Got a couple of changes in there. Hangs in the pocket, throws
too much into the face right at the last second there.
Here they come. And the pass is...
He read it perfectly, even dealt with the pressure from Ernest Jones and got enough on it.
Of the quarter. Williams avoids a sack.
He thinks, I got a soft spot, I'm going to settle right here. And the quarterback reads that he's going to contest, not quite on the same page. One settles, one's throwing it. See right there.
Just hit Allen for a short gain. Under pressure again.
And with 5 sacks.
3rd and 24. They only sent 3 this time. Pass is caught by Moore. Pressure. Look out.
It ends up pressuring. A couple of the guys in the inside end up dropping. The offensive lines can...
Deep drop. Steps up, fires.
Plays. Let's see what he does here.
Got to get 10 or it's good night, Irene. Throws it up in the air.
Caleb Williams tried to just basically throw it up, get enough on it to try to hope that somebody could come down.
There you go, guys. Chicago Bears offense on 3rd down. So Williams completed 16 of 28 passes for just 122 yards, 53.0 passer rating, rushed 37 yards on 5 carries, and his interceptions free streak ended at 353 passes, dating all the way back to week 6, which I guess is, to me, that's a big positive. I think it says a lot about the rookie and, you know, the way he's able to play in this league. Hopefully that'll lead to helping him grow. However, this game was just abysmal. You know, at the end of the day, I guess you're one offensive holding penalty from having the score be 7-6 instead of 6-3. But I mean, to not even be able to kick 2 field goals in a game is just sad. And to go out there and get your quarterback sacked 7 times again. I mean, I know I've heard this pick up a little bit more steam lately, you know, to maybe it's time to sit him or whatever. I was on that couple weeks ago just because I'm not a stat chaser, but that's what we're doing right now. We're chasing stats with Caleb Williams, and you know, we're risking his health and maybe his potential growth to do so. And what's up, Shane? Shane from Windy City End Zone. Love that guy. He's awesome. But yeah, it did not look pretty. Did not look pretty. At the end of the day, we had 3 games in 11 days though. Like what else could you expect from this team? And I know we're probably going to go into all sorts of different topics on tonight's show, but I wanted to start it there because that's where I always like to start it. On the field, execution, terrible. Just terrible. You're not going to win a game like that. We welcome our guest, J2K, this week. What's up, J2K? I know you had, you know, we got a little active in the comments last week, so I figured why not have you on. We always love your company and love your opinions and your takes, and yeah, thanks for taking the time to join us this week, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always appreciate it. Always a good time talking to you guys.
Any opinion on the game against Seattle?
Just put us out of our misery. We've got one more game left, and I'm not even looking forward to it. I mean, you like to beat Green Bay, but at this point, I don't expect anything. The last game was pretty, I mean, it was ridiculously bad. I mean, there's a handful of plays that I saw from Caleb, 3 like particular, that I think you see the potential there, but everything just surrounding him is just complete dysfunction. You know, the O-line, once they saw that the O-line couldn't pick up a blitz, they just blitzed. And yeah, I think everybody's checked out. I've checked out practically. Fan base is checked out. It's just, you know, we're just waiting for it to just finally die. There's no other way to put it. There's not.
That's a short in itself, right there.
On it with 3 Caleb passes that I thought were like, hey, that's something to grow on. There's you know, some talent there. There's something special there, and the rest of it is just flat out garbage.
You know, pretty much. And I keep saying this: if I wouldn't be video editing, I'll just be sitting there playing video games. And well, since I don't really have many highlights to show, I haven't been video editing. So I've been back on the Red Dead Redemption 2 here and there. And yeah, you're right. You're just like that deer that's just squandering in the bushes, just ready for you to just shove that final knife in and skin that thing and bring it back to camp. And Dave, how you doing today?
You're talking about my favorite game of all time. Yeah. I mean, J2K said the word right there. Just let it die. And I think death is the sweet release right now for the Bears season. And I don't know where we go from here. I think it's one of the nastiest Bears rebuilds I've been a part of. I think it's messy, it's ugly, and I don't really know where they're going to go from here. But yeah, I'm ready for it to be over, and I don't want to watch the Packers game just because I don't think there's much to gain from it. So we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, Daniel Jeffrey saying Black Monday can't get here any sooner. I don't think there's much to be gained from Black Monday this year. But it is what it is. And yeah, we can get into that as we keep going. But it was a sloppy, boring, terrible game. And it is what it is.
I don't know if you saw, but the thumbnail for the show that I created is actually a screenshot from the last seconds of the broadcast where it's 3 guys sitting in the stands with paper bags over their faces and says, "Why am I here?" Like, put me out of my misery. And the one guy's just flipping the 2 birds. And it's just, to me, I felt like making that the thumbnail because it just feels like if I had to summarize this season in one image, I think it would be that. You're right, David. It was ugly game. Dude, it's been an ugly year. I don't know if I can remember a more hated year in recent times, personally, that I just absolutely hate the way this entire year went. From you know why? It's that damn 4-2. They did it again. They made me get my hopes up. They made me get my hopes up a little bit, just a little bit, and I caved that little bit. And you did too. And I remember we were just like, okay, they're bad teams, but you're dominating. And here we go, man. What? How many have we lost in a row now?
10.
Just, yeah, as if they couldn't gut punch us hard enough. You know what I mean? And
I think it goes earlier than that, Paulie. I think it goes into the offseason and us knowing this was coming and knowing what like the culture was here and what Eberflus was and we held hope. And like I said, the only positive out of this catastrophic season was that maybe it's sloppy enough, it's messy enough to shake the tree in the Bears organization and with the McCaskeys and in that boardroom. But after the Albert Breer, reports today, it wasn't enough. It's still not enough. And if this isn't enough, I don't know what is enough. And so I think watching, what else pisses me off is, I think for you too, is watching the teams that do it correctly. And all I kept thinking about going into this episode was like me and you and our tenets of football, the things that we can drive our stakes into the ground. And this is what we believe in. And if this isn't done correctly, then no football organization is going to be perform correctly. And a lot of what we believed in was the opposite this offseason. And we still believed that there was a chance. And I think watching the Chargers be incredibly good and successful, watching the Broncos be a playoff team, watching, Buffalo do it, and all these things that we believe in, and watching these teams, and they're doing the things that we say you need to do well and you need to do, period, for you to be successful. And we just watch the Bears not do them. And so watching them simultaneously and how high their ceiling is right now, I think that's where the anger comes in, because it was so in your face. And I think the worst is still to come.
Yeah, Minnesota. I think Minnesota is a team that's, you look at, a lot of people thought was going to be in the basement, and and purely, I mean, sure, they've got some talent on the team. I mean, they've got one of the best wide receivers in football, but then you start looking around and you're like, well, there's not a lot of stars on that team outside of him. And to see how much coaching made a difference with Minnesota's year versus our year and how bad the coaching has been. It's really sad because, I thought we had at least decent enough coaches, guys who had been around in the league. There wasn't a lot of, well, I don't know who that guy is. Shane Waldron, offensive coordinator for 2 years in Seattle. Thomas Brown, up and coming coach that gets rave reviews. Eric Washington, up and coming coach. I mean, there's a lot of guys that had some hype around it. And I also want to backtrack a little bit to, and it's meaningless now that you look back on it, but Hard Knocks, the Hollywood, the Bears, and then we go 4-0 in preseason, and then we go 4-2, and it's just like we're on this just upward trajectory, and then it's just a small collapse with a Hail Mary, and then the next game's a big collapse, and then it's a bigger collapse, and then it doesn't stop.
I just want to address Crimson real quick. He's saying, why do you think there was hope, this and that? I know there was a lot of that going on. Just want to bring it back. Me and David both had this team at 9-8. So as much like the tour of their mansion, our mansion wasn't that big. Like, we still had this team as a 500 team. I didn't have them at 4 wins, though. You know what I mean? Like, so to have them worse than our opinion that was pretty conservative compared to a lot of the other opinions, I think it is part of the thing. It's like, I didn't think this team was a playoff team necessarily by any means. So, I didn't really think there was much of a chance. It's just, it's wound up being even worse.
I was going to say,
that.
Why did we think there was a chance? This is a pretty good team. I mean, and Caleb is objectively better than Justin Fields and what he could do with talent around him. I think we underestimated what Poles has put here, or overestimated. I don't know, man. We're at the end of the day, like, this is a Bears YouTube channel. We're gonna be optimistic even when we are considered the pessimists. Like, me and Paulie are considered the pessimists or the realists. But even then, like, I mean, we can't just say 2 wins every year. I don't think. I mean, I might start saying that moving forward, but I mean, this is maybe the worst I've ever seen the Bears franchise state in. I think this is the worst, and I don't think has a positive moving forward.
And to what J2K said too with the Minnesota Vikings, that was part of my thing. For us to go 9-8, I need a team in this division to suck. And that team's going to be the Minnesota Vikings. And here we are in week 5, and they're 5-0. You know what I mean? And right then and there, I kind of knew, like, this isn't going to happen the way I want it to happen. We are going to be the bottom feeders here. And so, you need certain things to go a certain way. And it turns out that, Kevin O'Connell might be, hell, he might win Coach of the Year this year. I mean, he's definitely a candidate.
He might be the best coach in the league.
What he's done over there is pretty remarkable to me. Hats off to that guy. Hell of a coaching job this year.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to where did the optimism come from? Last, I think, 8 games of the season were a top 5 defense. Last year before, we were 1 or 2 in rushing yards. I know that Justin Fields inflated that somewhat, but when you looked at, Khalil Herbert's yards per carry, they were actually exceptionally good. Then, we got, Keenan Allen, and we go into the draft and get Rome Odunze, and you start to think, well, if our defense can hold, maybe, Caleb Williams can be a decent rookie, and there's enough firepower around the team that, we can score points, or it'll be a short field, and we've got a rookie punter who's supposed to be exceptional, and that's going to create even more of a short field. So there was a line of thinking to optimism that, I bought. I think it just goes to show how much, how Poles built this team outside in, and I think how Flus ran the team. I think he was actually too soft of a guy, and he basically just kind of got taken advantage of, and players not doing the most they can to do the best they can.
And none of us are gatekeepers here. I mean, if we would hold some of these other people we talk to hostage for their crazy takes. I mean, believe me, I've met plenty of them, and I got, plenty of them down to be like, that person was wrong, that person. But no, you don't do that. I mean, what do you care, right? And at the end of the day, I'm always willing to go back and say what I thought and talk about why that was inaccurate, or you know what I mean, or whatever. But but the results are the results, and it is what it is.
Sorry,
I just hate when
last
David's
comment
right.
part.
No, I just hate when you're right, David, because it's like I go back like when we hired Flus, and you're like, this guy's too nice. He's too much of a yes man. And this is like, I want David to be wrong moving forward, because man,
I want to be wrong moving forward.
Because yeah, dude, like I go back to a lot of the things that you said, and like, listen, last year after the Broncos game, after Justin Fields fumbled that football and we lost that Broncos game, right then and there, me and David were like, do we keep Eberflus? Because this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I mean, so you could go back far for us to, you know what I mean, have little traces of it, but you give these guys the benefit of the doubt. When you're entering the offseason, there's enough there to make sense for the moves that they did, keeping him around and things like that. I mean, you don't typically fire a coach when he's increased his wins from year 1 to year 2 and things like that. And so, it is what it is. It's a lot easier for us to sit there and be like, pull the plug, get Harbaugh. But J2K, you mentioned to me, Harbaugh might have never been interested. Like, as much as we are sitting here saying that might have not even been possible. Right?
Yeah, and I'm hearing that on 2 different accounts. That one, Harbaugh and Warren went back and forth over COVID. Warren didn't want college players to practice and play games. Harbaugh pushed for them to play and practice. So there was a disconnect there. And then also I know Harbaugh's like overall arching career, he goes from Chicago, goes to the Chargers. Then when he finishes and retires from the NFL, he ends up going to San Diego State University and coaching there, or University of San Diego, coaching there. Then he goes to Stanford. Then he goes to San Francisco. And then he goes back to his alma mater, in Michigan. And I forget who said it. It was just one of the people who always breaks news for the NFL. Oh, Tom Pelissero. Yeah, he came out and said in September, way before the Chargers head coach was fired, that he was thinking that if that job opened up, that he would be going there. Harbaugh said this,
and you know what? And like people are like, "Oh, Harbaugh has ties to the Bears." Man, if you've experienced this, you know better than to come back here, right? Like that's probably why he won't take the job here.
I think the only level of crazy enough to come back here is somebody like Olin Kreutz, and that guy's a whole new level of crazy. So,
right?
Yeah, but me and David both are step in our mindset of the next coach that we both want is Vrabel. Now I know J2K that you kind of have some different opinions, and I know you pitched to me a scenario for Brian Flores, and recently there's even been some talk that there is some connection to Brian Flores and Kevin Warren, and you said Ryan Poles too. So I heard that come out that he may be a candidate of interest. So I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit on that and how you think that scenario would play out.
In my top 3. So it's not like, I disagree with you guys as far as your points are, as far as he's concerned. I have my preference would be Brian Flores, and more information is coming out that there is a connection. Flores, Ryan Poles were both teammates at one point. And what was the other? I think Flores and Kevin Warren.
There's Minnesota ties there.
Yeah, the Minnesota.
Whatever, so.
Well,
I mean, he wasn't there while Kevin Warren was there, but
Warren built a stadium well before Brian Flores went there. I'm not sure what the next connection is. And it's not so much, I'm not really talking about there's a heavy connection there. I just think that, the 2 things that I would really want out of a head coach is an alpha male in the room and a brilliant schematics person. I think Vrabel is that alpha male in the room, but I don't think he's the schematics guy. I think Ben Johnson is the schematics guy, but he's not the alpha male. Brian Flores is both. And to me, like that's what you look for in a potential, star head coach. And I'm fond of the idea of bringing Josh McCown, who is the quarterback coach and assistant offensive coordinator in Minnesota, in as our offensive coordinator. Now, I can't base that on anything because he's only had a few games calling offense when he was with Carolina. He's been around with a lot of very good coaches. He's been around for a while. And I think he's kind of in that progression to eventually be offensive coordinator. It wouldn't surprise me if he actually is offensive coordinator for some other team next year, actually calling plays. But I think he's an up-and-coming kid. And if you're going to marry, alpha male head coach who's got a great defensive scheme with a young offensive play caller who's an ex-Bear who, everybody's worked with Josh McCown absolutely loves him. I think he's, in a way, he's young enough that he's going to connect with Caleb. But he's still got that alpha male in the room in Brian Flores. So I like the idea.
I mean, Paulie, I don't know if you want me to respond first or you.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no issue with Brian Flores and Josh McCown as a pairing. Proven track record wise with Brian Flores, I don't know how much I like that. Brian Flores ended up being correct about Tua, in my opinion. I think Mike McDaniel came in and he did his job. He maximized what he could out of Tua. I think Tua is not as good as everybody kind of makes him out to be. And Brian Flores' biggest issue in Miami was the fact that he just never really supported Tua and he coached him hard and all that stuff. I think that's what, and reading what the tea leaves are and everything like that. I think the biggest issue the Bears as a franchise, because we can talk about the next coach and we can talk about the next staff, but I think at the end of the day, none of it's going to matter if like structurally the organization is just not where it needs to be. And right now, Ryan Poles working with Brian Flores for the next 1 year, because we don't know how much longer Ryan Poles gets, or God forbid he gets an extension or something like that. I think that's just my biggest issue. And I personally, like today, kind of came to that realization where I think this is going to be the worst 3 to 5 years we have experienced. People think it's bad this year. I think it's only going to get worse. I really do think it's only going to get worse. I mean,
son of a bitch. This is what I'm talking about, though. Like 2 years from
know.
now, I'll be like, God damn you, David.
I mean, it's just more
like,
what are the roads of being successful here? What are the roads of not being successful? Like, you're at the end of the day, you're going to be stuck in the NFC North no matter how hard you try, right? And you're talking about the 3 youngest, best teams in all of the NFC. You have a 7 seed or a 6 seed that's going to be 13-4, like out of your own division. Like, the best you can do is be 8-9 and be the baby brother of this division for the next 3 to 4 years. So that's my kind of issue, is I think the perspective thing with the next head coaching. Like, if I hear one more thing about Ben Johnson, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Oh, you're going to.
As
That's
if
why I
he's
brought
like,
JTK on.
as if he's like the
That's
shirt.
why I brought him on.
And I get the opportunity of Ben Johnson, but to assume Ben Johnson is going to come in here and beat the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings anywhere in the next 3 to 4 years. If Ben Johnson is the guy that you think he is, he still needs 3 years to do what he's supposed to do to this franchise. It's not an overnight success type thing. Ben Johnson has no idea what he's doing, nor should he. It makes no sense for him to know what he's doing. So it's more of a working out process. That's why I think like the advantages versus the disadvantages of a Vrabel or somebody who could come in here and at least establish a baseline, or at least establish some sort of like NFL level competency, knowing what the NFL looks like. Right now, you have Ryan Poles, who does not know what he's doing. And then Ryan Poles is going to be in charge of the head coaching search and helping Ben Johnson along the way. This is the blind leading the blind. You have no one in the building that knows for sure what to do or what an NFL franchise successfully looks like. And so that's why Flores, let's address real quick Flores. I don't hate it. To me, it's like a 80% higher of what Vrabel could be here, because you're hoping that Brian Flores, this is something I noticed yesterday too, because I've been following this week of football. I've got extra time. Raheem Morris. Does anybody remember the Raheem Morris coaching hiring cycle last year? It sounded identical to Thomas Brown. And Raheem Morris looks like a fucking buffoon in Atlanta. No time management situation, no clock management. Something about Sean McVay, he just hypes up his guys to be geniuses no matter who they are or what position of the staff they're on. And yes, Sean McVay has like a lot of successful coaching tree offshoots. I get that. Ben Johnson is not one of those. Raheem Morris was one of those, and he looks like a fucking moron. Thomas Brown, I mean, I don't even know if he's good or if it matters, because he just took over a dumpster fire. And so Thomas Brown, I can't even blame.
It, right? Like, you're not going to put it out.
And it's not his playbook too, right?
Yeah,
it's not. He's I get all
losing
that,
situation
right now,
where you can't judge him.
Right now, if you hire Mike Vrabel, he is the only stabilizing force in that entire building. And right now, if you're not hiring a stabilizing force, you're hoping for somebody to become one. And my problem with that is now you're the blind leading the blind. And I don't understand how you're expected to do that. And even then, the expectations of somebody like that are just way too high. Brian Flores is a good hire. Is he the ideal hire for what I think the Bears specifically need? No, because he's incredibly volatile. He was known for being volatile in Miami. He was aggressive and calling guys out and guys who were fighting back and being too mean to his players, to a point where, yes, he's holding accountability, but to a detriment at some point. That's not just the stabilizing that I think
he did come out and say that he did. One, he came out and apologized, and he did talk about his time and that he learned a lot from that experience. So I do preface my desire for Flores, or my like of him as a potential candidate, with the fact that if he has gotten past that, if he has learned those things, and from what I hear from the Minnesota players is that, they'll run through a wall for him. They've even said, if Brian Flores leaves, I want to know where he's going, because I'm going to go and play for him. So there is a lot coming out that does diffuse that Miami history there. It is there, so I don't want to completely debunk it. And this is just kind of, the rumor mill. Can I drop a bombshell on you guys?
Yeah, I'd love to address some of those points, but yeah,
really quick.
Go ahead. No, go do it.
I'm very, very confident Ryan Poles will be extended, and he'll be extended to match the head coaching contract.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And David,
I know he was going to be. If they were going to keep him, they wouldn't keep him on 1 year. I
love David's reaction, because I was thinking through this earlier, J2K, and I'm just like, I feel the same way. It's gonna happen. And to David,
well, they would have fired him.
David said at one point, he's like, "No, I'm done because you're on multiple timelines." Okay, well, they're going to match the timelines. However, at the same time, you're saying, Ryan, you did a good job. We're extending you, right? Like, isn't that what you're basically saying? Instead of cutting him early.
I'm very confident that he's going to get extended.
I think that will happen.
It's not like an opinion. They would have fired him already.
But
they wouldn't have him go and spend his time
address a couple things
on a head coach.
Brian Flores called out his ownership in Miami, said that they offered him $100,000 per loss to tank.
Yeah.
Man, he's going to come here and be like, "Oh my God, Miami was great." Like, if he wants to speak truth about what ownership dictates to him here, then David will really be right, proven right. Another thing is, the whole Mike Vrabel thing. I always go back to what Yurko on ESPN 1000 said. He's like, man, as a lineman, We line up. Ball snapped. He's like, if I could just manhandle you physically, just grab you and fucking toss you, we don't get to the martial arts hand fighting. It's like you play checkers before you play chess. You got to be physical before you can be cute. And when I watch the Patriots all these years, I always go back to 4th and 1. What are they doing? Tom Brady, quarterback sneak. It's not about scheming. You know what the hell they're doing. They're going to do it to you. It's what the Eagles did last year with the tush push. You know what's coming. Stop it. And if you can't, that's step one. And so what I think Mike Vrabel would establish is step one, period. And that's how you might be able to sit there and kind of sneak in a little punch in the jaw on some of these teams and maybe sneak out a division win or two next year against these top teams, man. I mean, these are 3 really damn good teams. I actually think the Packers have just as good of a chance as Minnesota or the Lions at making some noise in the playoffs. As sad as that is to hear. I mean, they're the youngest damn team in the league. 10 wins in the strongest division. That's why Vrabel's my guy. And I go back to a clip that David showed me too. When they traded away A.J. Brown, he was pissed. He looked like he wanted to punch that GM right in the face, walked right past him, just stared at him. And what has A.J. Brown done since? Nothing but success. So why was he pissed? Because he lost one of his best players. And so it's not always about being a yes man to the GM, which is what we had with Matt Eberflus. Sure, Ryan, trade up for Rome. That'd be great. We need Rome. No, I need a guy that'll hold his own. You know what I mean? And I truly believe that, like, Mike Vrabel checks all those boxes for me. And these other guys might not. Like, we're really hoping again. And my whole underlying theme of this whole entire season is I'm done with hoping. And I want to start doing. And I think Mike Vrabel would come in here and do.
And
like, I don't,
Paul, to your point, right? Like, it summarizes it perfectly and coincidentally. You're talking about hope. Like, even with J2K and Brian Flores is like the opinion of maybe giving Brian Flores and Ryan Poles another shot. Like, that's fine. Like, there's something to be said to me about George McCaskey just constantly claiming to have learned his lesson while simultaneously obviously demonstrating that he has not learned his fucking lesson, right? He is a dummy who believes in second chances and like, oh, I've learned I made a mistake and I get to learn from it and I'm going to do it differently this time, and then simultaneously never doing it differently. So with the, I don't hate the Brian Flores potential hire. I think it's the most Bears thing to do. It's the third or fourth option, right? Because you can't get the first or second options, or you're not trying hard enough to get them. Because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, if you're a fucking NFL franchise worth $6 billion, which you are, you can get any goddamn head coaching candidate you want on the planet to go in there and do what you want. It's the onus is on you to be willing to take those changes and take that advice and to take Mike Vrabel's 22 years of NFL experience and be like, Mike, how does it work? And then you're just not willing to take it. So it's, again, a little bit more of like hope. You hope that Ryan Poles learned from his incredibly arrogant, stupid mistakes, and you're hoping that now he's a cookie cutter GM with a twist of flavor who drafts O-line in the first and second round and stops reaching for 9th overalls and makes these big trades. And you're hoping that Brian Flores learned how to stop agitating his ownership and learn how to talk to players better. You're hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping. And that's what it is. And that's why I feel like this staff is a perfect microcosm. And like, even the potential, let's just fucking say it, that it's Brian Flores and Josh McDaniels and it's Ryan Poles. That is the hope all-stars. That is the fucking Space Jam all-stars of let's hope they all learn their lessons from being stupid and making all these obvious mistakes. And let's hope that this fucking figures it out. Ben Johnson is one of those, let's hope all-stars. You don't need that here. You need a Mike Vrabel to show you what good football looks like. You haven't seen it since Lovey, and even then it might have been a flash in the pan. It might have been. I don't know. I don't want to speak ill of Lovey or what he did here. I think he was also in a perfect like bath of just like amazing talent, and like the scheme was perfect. It was Urlacher and Briggs and Tommy Harris. Like that was just perfect. It was like a perfect storm. And that's what the McCaskeys just like sit back and lean on. And that's not what these good teams do, man. They don't lean on a hope and a prayer and hope that everything lines up together. And especially in this moment, like you're catastrophically waiting for like just a waste of 5 years of Caleb. You're wasting a Roma Dunze pick. You're wasting all of it. It's the hope all-stars. And that's what the McCaskeys is. It makes sense. Don't get me wrong. But if Ryan Poles gets extended, you're literally just hoping he learned his lessons. And we've talked about this 2-3 weeks ago about like, if you do hire Ryan Poles back, you have neutered him completely because now you are fully expecting him to do the cookie cutter, Mel Kiper, all that bullshit draft type of stuff that you would expect a guy who does not have job security to do.
If he wants to trade up next year, he can't.
He can't. It's impossible because even if he does have a hint that like I'm positive I was wrong about the first 7, but this one I'm definitely right about, he can't do it.
So
it just shortens his leash even more.
If there's any hope that he will, it's going to be the Chase Claypool, Montez Sweat situation where it's like you trade away a second round. This guy obviously failed. Next year you do it again, but you go, you know what? I'm not going to let the previous failure dictate my future. And J2K, damn it, I was going to say something and then let it go to you.
I wanted to respond to what Dave was saying. So, you know, I agree with you that it is all based on hope. We don't know the outcome. We don't know what's going to happen. So I kind of think anybody is hope. So I would just toss this out there. I think Vrabel is in the same boat of hope. He was 13-34 over his final 2 seasons.
Okay, and you know, J2K, that actually reminds me exactly what I was going to say. I'm going to be real quick here, and then I'll bounce it right back to you. So last show when we mentioned this, one of the comments we got, which kind of just stuck with me, was somebody's like, okay, Vrabel gets you to 9-8.
Oh, I said that. I said,
you said
9-8
okay.
Forever.
Perfect. J2K, in the last 12 years, we've had 1 season over 500.
Well,
so we're going to scoff at 500? Like, we're in position
to expect better than 9-8. Like, you want the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl or bust. I understand it takes steps to get there.
It takes steps. Players.
It takes steps to get there. I understand that, though. But
how many you're going to step your way out of Caleb Williams' prime and his
so that's
contract.
The gamble, though. That's the gamble.
But Vrabel's not a gamble.
The last time we had a first overall pick, was in 1957. We get one, we trade it away. Next year, miraculously, we have another one. 2 back-to-back first overall picks. We haven't had one since 1957. So not only do we get the trade in the hall, we also get the quarterback. That's the gamble. And now everything else around that's why I'm going super conservative. Like, dude, let's just let that.
But I don't think Vrabel is conservative. Look,
I like
Vrabel. He's my third option, right? I do like Vrabel. So don't get me wrong when I push back on the Vrabel discussion. I just don't think he's guaranteed to be a very successful head coach. I thought he was good to average and then had a major fall off with the Titans.
But I think he's the most likely to be that.
Why?
Here's my thing, real quick, just to address the Vrabel thing. I think he's the best person for this situation now. I think a Vrabel or a Harbaugh are incredibly rare. I think they come around once every 5 years. I think these guys that can put in 5 to 10 years in a franchise and not let it phase them, regardless of win, loss, or anything in between. That's why Tomlins are so rare. Mike Tomlins are incredibly rare. Here's my point of like all of this. If Ben Johnson was such a fucking crazy candidate, the only way I would even entertain Ben Johnson to the hype level that he has somehow built himself is like if a team like Philadelphia goes, okay, if a team like Philadelphia doesn't like what Nick Sirianni did in this postseason, and they get bounced in the first round, and then you hear all these reports about like Philadelphia being interested in Ben Johnson to kind of revamp the team and and they've done their research, I would at that point be more likely to be a Ben Johnson fan as a candidate than I am at this point. Part of my mistrust in this Ben Johnson coaching cycle is if Ben Johnson was this good and this obvious of a can't-miss candidate, there'd be good teams sacrificing their coach to get a great coach. There'd be good teams that are like 500 or good teams trying to be great. It's not a guarantee. You don't know what Ben Johnson is. You don't know what Liam Cohen is. You don't know what Brian Flores is going to take you over the top or over the edge. And that's why, like to Paulie's point, Mike Vrabel will put you in a sense of respect, a sense of relevancy in the NFC, period. Like if the NFC has to push out 3 playoff teams for the next 5 years because that's just what it is, and you're competing for that 7 seed every year, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm not trying to be the 1 seed.
Like I don't see much of a difference between Mike Vrabel and Ron Rivera.
That's
Huge
wild.
difference.
That's wild.
They're both
because
leaders
because
of
Ron
the locker
Rivera is
room.
68 years old, clearly past his prime. And Ron Rivera, towards the end of even his, Ron Rivera was so dysfunctional that Ron Rivera was fired by Dan Snyder. Dan Snyder couldn't deal with Ron Rivera. That's what we're talking about.
That doesn't matter to me at all. No, what I'm saying
Dan Snyder's opinion doesn't matter. Dan Snyder was the worst owner in all of football before the McCaskeys, and now McCaskeys are top 5 worst owners in the league.
No, I just don't. I just think that ownership meddling in a team is quite overblown to an extent. I don't see Dan Snyder was never a guy who is a roster or coaching hire guy. I think the guy down in Carolina like screwed his team, the GM, because he did step in and try to meddle with the roster and push the GM to make certain decisions and stuff. So I do think it happens in some places. I just think it's kind of overblown. I don't think George McCaskey is actually as much of a puppeteer as people like to make him. I think he's a PR guy, so the rest of ownership, the actual chairmen, the other people on the team don't have to deal with any of this stuff. The guy like picks up people's bags at the airport and all that.
My original point also, real quick, just to kind of like full circle it, because Carl had the point of like Vrabel and Harbaugh are not very comparable. Could not agree more. Like if Harbaugh's a 10,
Vrabel's like a
I'm sorry. Harbaugh's a 10. Vrabel's a 7.5 and 8. But it's the
ideal guy's
you
not
do
out
in this
there
situation.
right now. Yep,
It's
exactly.
not. So that's what I'm saying is like
the ideal move was last year. It was the cutthroat move. I hear you, and although it might have not been possible or whatever, you make that happen.
Well,
like that was the move.
How do you sell that? How does polls go to Warren? Money. This is
money talks, man. I don't know. No,
this
yeah,
listen,
we're
outside of the
I get it.
We don't understand how it works.
Maybe it's not even a possibility, but
being successful in LA, and we're like, why didn't we get him? Well, he wanted to go to LA. He's had a relationship with Spanos for over 30 years.
He did, and I heard even.
And I'm not saying that Vrabel was the.
And you're going to blame Ryan Foles, you're going to blame Kevin Warren, you're going to toss all this blame around because they didn't show the money. Show me the money. It's just it's a fan invented theory.
I don't even.
You asked me a question. I answered it. You asked how would you do it?
That would be the only way. To that. I don't even aspire to that claim that like like Harbaugh was begging to come here and bang down the door and hop in here and yada yada. No, I don't think that Harbaugh was like a shoe-in right in there. I think the issue, and I guess we can go like full circle, is like, even if Harbaugh wanted to be here, is there any version that the McCaskeys would have let Harbaugh come in here and put his fingers in every single pot of the Bears? I don't
see. That's the whole thing with the ownership. I think you guys are making something out of nothing, to be honest. I don't think George McCaskey
you say you, not hey.
I think fans who blame ownership, blame George McCaskey for the failures of this team, don't understand what George McCaskey's actual role is. He's a PR guy, so the other chairmen don't have to have their face on TV. That's it.
Chairman and PR guys don't go into interview rooms and talk about, like, you don't wheel. If you're a chairman and you're purely a PR guy, you do not wheel your 100-year-old mother into interviews.
Isn't that what PR thing is?
No.
Relations? Yes, that's the whole idea. Like, here's the great grandmother of the Chicago Bears. The idiot stepchild who doesn't have a real job, so they gave me
them the Chicago
baggage carrier man.
What does that have to do with football, though?
Yeah,
like these guys that are obsessed with football are literally
make football decisions. He came out and said that Ryan Poles is going to have full ability to get whatever head coach he wants. We're staying out of this. That's what ownership wants.
I'm with you.
Staying out of it.
And I agree. I don't think
pushing the Ryan Poles agenda this early, how does that not limit your head coaching pool immediately?
So that's the problem. That's a great question. Yes, because
how is he
because
what do you mean? It cuts it in half at minimum.
Because J2K, let me just throw this out there. So any candidate out there that is willing to be a head coach, but wants their GM to come with them. Like, for example, Mike Vrabel.
How many times has that happened?
Listen. For example, Mike Vrabel did not like his GM in Tennessee. So his next endeavor, he may be willing to wait for a situation that allows him to bring somebody with him that he doesn't have to disagree with, because he already went through that.
But that doesn't happen.
It does happen, though.
No, it doesn't. How many head coaches hire GMs?
The 49ers did.
And who else? And that was to get Kyle Shanahan.
I'm just saying. So if
how many other teams? You're talking about like a 1% if you go back 10 years.
Okay,
but
that's
fair. Hold on,
that's fair.
No,
that's fair. But
hold on. I got a rebuttal.
Bill Belichick isn't an option.
Answering a direct rebuttal. The Commanders just did it. The Niners just did it. And what you're saying, and a lot of people have kind of had to say this stuff too, is like, this is my point with the Ben Johnson, like, guaranteed hot take, like it's a done deal if Ben Johnson gets hired. I gave you multiple examples like 2 weeks ago about how a head coach that is an offensive play caller, like, subtract Sean Payton and subtract Andy Reid. Those don't count.
You know what?
Those are 20-year-old ingrained things.
Sean McVay might make the playoffs now.
That's fine. Whatever. Sean McVay, you still have literally a handful. It's 5. It's McVay, Shanahan, Stefanski, O'Connell, and LaFleur. All McVay coaching trees. I don't want to really hear about it in terms of like guaranteeing the Ben Johnson.
6?
Yeah, I mentioned him.
Oh, okay. That was in the 5?
Yeah. O'Connell, okay. McVay, Shanahan, LaFleur, Stefanski. Those are your 5 locked in, dialed in offensive head coaches that are also play callers. I said Reed doesn't count and Peyton doesn't count. They've been doing it for 30 fucking years.
Fair.
They're ingrained in the NFL, and even then, both of them are debatable. Whatever.
Still, you don't need it, though.
No. The point.
I mean, he's
all right. That's fun.
Stop. Come on.
No, I mean, he's a great offensive coordinator. As a head coach.
At the start of the year, he was touted as the worst.
Okay, so we're just looking at this year.
No, I
Oh, this
agree with
year's
you.
the only
Experience goes
grading
a long way,
process?
man. Experience goes a long way. I agree with you. But he's not trash by any means, but like,
Here's the thing. The point of asking, it's like, well, when does this happen? When does this happen? If you want to talk about recent experiences where those things line up, it's the most recent examples. And it's the most consistent examples of like lockstep GM and head coach being hired together. And also, it's a pure example of anti-Bears. The
But hold
Bears
on,
do
that's not
everything
how it
ass
happens.
backwards.
GMs and head
They
coaches don't
hired
get hired
coach,
together.
then GMs.
No, they hire a GM, and the GM does a coaching search, and they go out and get their guy. That's what a general manager is. So now you guys, everybody talks about the Bears do everything backwards all over again, and you guys are saying get a head coach to hire his own GM. That's backwards.
No,
they're like falling right into the whole Bears narrative trap.
They need to be connected together because if you want to get into most recent things, then it's
I don't
O'Connell,
care if the head coach.
It's
is
O'Connell
the GM.
and what I forget his name. It's a very complicated name, so I'm
If
not
it's Bill
trying to say it
Belichick.
and dismiss it. No, hold on, but I'm not trying to dismiss this guy. But if J2K wants to pull out, like, when does this matter? It never happens. The four most recent examples I can think of is Minnesota with O'Connell and I forget his name. Can't name it off the top of my head.
No,
but it's
the
Minnesota.
GM hired O'Connell.
J2K, to be fair, you pitched
O'Connell
a
didn't
situation
walk
to
in
me.
there and say, "This
J-
is who my GM is."
J2K, to be fair, you also pitched a situation to me where Ben Johnson comes over and brings the GM from the Lions with him, right?
Well, that was
okay. So I'm just saying those things exist in those conversations. You know what I mean?
That wasn't this point. The whole point was that if Poles was fired, you could hire Agnew, and he would definitely hire Ben Johnson. That isn't bringing Ben Johnson and he hires Agnew. That's not how NFL teams work.
It's not
GM hires a head coach, not the other way around.
That's not the point. You're acting. You're putting too much stock. Yes, it is, because you're putting stock in the hierarchy rather than the football mindset. Is right now Ryan Poles gets an extension. Cool. Does Ryan Poles feel empowered to hire whoever the fuck he wants? No, he's completely neutered. He's a completely one-handed GM. By who? By his track record. He's on the fucking hot seat, and he gets
who? George McCaskey?
So, but like, you're acting like George McCaskey doesn't pay the bills. You're being like, well, then who's going to fire him? George doesn't have that power to fire anyone. Of course he has the power to fire anyone. He fires everybody. He's the guy who pays the bills and fires everybody. But you're saying like George has no influence and no power here. He has all the power.
No, that's a fallacy
argument.
But yes, I think that it's a chairman decision, which there are multiple chairmen who make. But
your response to my
George is just the
who's he threatened by? George? Yes, that is exactly who he's threatened by. But to dismiss George and to say Poles gets an extension, so now he has no bosses. That was your implication.
He's the GM. He does.
He's on the hot seat.
So it definitely cuts at least some.
Going to be paid on the hot seat for 5 years.
Out, so J2K, it definitely cuts some people out who would not want to work with Poles.
That's not how it works.
How does it
work? It wouldn't, like, you're not, look, if we don't have a GM, we need to hire a GM to hire a coach. That cuts out a lot of people because the next GM may only have a certain amount of guys that he wants to work with. No matter how you slice and dice it, the GM has a preference, and that cuts other guys out.
But not when the GM is doing decisions based on his job. It isn't. It's like, I don't know how to say this. Like, if you don't see that people in the NFL go into self-preservation mode, then I can't explain it any differently. It's just a difference of opinion.
Well, I'm still trying to understand how Poles is. Is somehow neutered. His hands are tied behind his back, because I don't think so. I think he's going to get the extension, and he's going to have full autonomy over the coaching staff.
Harbaugh hired his own GM as well, I believe.
They came in like this because they have they have similar opinions on how football operations work. This is partially why my first point of Ben Johnson. Let's say you get Ben Johnson. Let's say Ryan Poles does have blank checks in his new checkbook that George handed him, and Ben Johnson gets to go in and do whatever the fuck he wants. It's still the blind leading the blind. Who is Ben Johnson supposed to ask for in terms of player personnel decisions? The guy who hasn't had a successful draft pick in his 3 fucking years as Bears head coach, or as Bears GM? How the fuck is somebody as a new head coach supposed to go in and be like, you know what, I trust your football opinions because I've seen them be successful, versus somebody like a guy from what is it, Frank Agnew or whatever his name is, from the Lions, that he trusts. They are in lockstep. They have sharing mindsets of who is good and who is not. So now Ben Johnson is going into his meetings during the draft, and he goes like, well, Ryan, this is my first year as head coach. I don't really do the draft thing. I was just an offensive coordinator. I'm relying on you to do these offensive moves and do these things. Guess what, Ryan? I need a lineman. What is Ryan Poles going to do? He's going to go through his Rolodex of linemen and take the safest pick possible. I'm not saying that being creative and being, moving back and up and in and out of the draft all the time is legitimately successful. They are 50-50 propositions. But when it's somebody like Howie Roseman trading up in the draft, I think there's a significantly higher probability of that trade up being successful than a trade down, or opposite, or the other. Whereas Ryan Poles at this point is going fuck, I don't know. You know what? Ben Johnson said he needs offensive line help. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to draft this nickel in the 22nd pick of the draft because I'm Ryan Poles and I think I'm fucking smarter than anybody else. I skip Jalen Carter and take Darnell Wright. I take 2 defensive backs in the first round of my new head coach's defense. I just fucking know things and I'm smarter than everybody. He's going to be a neuter GM. If Ryan Poles is here for the next head coaching cycle, you may as well copy and paste Mel Kiper or Todd McShay's offensive and defensive line position drafted and then put it into Ryan Poles' Rolodex. That's who's going to be taken. It's going to be the most cookie cutter shit, which not necessarily is a bad thing. It might end up being the best thing because sometimes Ryan Poles needs to be saved from himself because he's a moron, obviously, as he's demonstrated over 3 years. But what you're doing in terms of if Mike Vrabel came in and Mike Vrabel said, you know what we need is a nickel here for my defense, or we're taking an outside linebacker, or we're taking a nose tackle, I would trust the process. It gives you a little bit of leeway in terms of what that guy is doing with the team structure and who's going to be drafted moving forward. So it gives you that a little bit of wiggle room. Right now, all you can expect is 6-11 and cookie cutter draft picks out of Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson, because they're just, what else are you going to expect? They have no one knows what anyone is doing. No one has demonstrated success here.
Well, all right. I take it from what you're saying, you are definitely not a fan of Ryan Poles. So
never have been.
Strange for me because, I went into the Ryan Poles tenure saying, what's the plan here? I want to see how he rebuilds this team. And I'm in this odd position because I've been saying this whole time, it's I don't like the building outside in that Ryan Poles is doing. Everybody's like, trust in Poles. Poles got this, all this kind of just rhetoric. And there's no resume to show whether he's been successful with this type of a rebuild, right? And now I feel like I'm going to be the guy who's defending him because while I don't agree with his build outside in, I look at his track record as far as drafting and signing players, given the amount of cap space we had and the draft picks we've had. And I think he's done actually a very good job. And I know you're going to completely disagree with me. So
No,
I
I'll
don't
agree with
understand this
you.
concept that Ryan Poles is somehow neutered and somehow he's going to change his draft philosophy and just pick super safe guys, or he's not going to do he's not going to be locked in step with the head coach. If anything, there's an argument to be made that he actually did a lot of what Flus asked him for. Flus said, I want to rebuild this defense, and says, okay, well, the best players we foresee getting is going to be Kyler Gordon and Brisker, and that's going to help build your defense.
And J2K, I get that point too. And one thing that's kind of confusing about this whole situation that we're in right now as a team is the fact that I never really had faith or trust in the coaching to begin with. However, last year we ended up really hot. Like, this team was getting 3-4 turnovers. I mean, this defense at least was getting 3-4 turnovers a game. You know what I mean? There was pressure while the talent wasn't there. It's like Montez Sweat, I said, seemed to have elevated the defensive line. When I thought he was going to be crippled by how bad it was, he seemed to have made other guys better. And it's almost like the coaching failing these guys, and the amount of effort they're giving is kind of what happened during part of the season, where it just all blew up. And it's so confusing to me, because it's like, okay, so if you get a guy in here that could just get the effort back to 100%, are we talented? I think we might be a little bit more talented than what we've shown the last half of the season. So what we've shown for the last half of the season has been a bottom 2 defense. And that's not what we showed for last year, for the last half of the season. Because those things are so drastic, you know what I mean? We got to fall at least somewhere in the middle there. And so I think it's weird, because I'm not sure. Yeah, exactly. They quit, but are they talented?
Whether you talk about
talented is a different question.
Talent
right?
is such a blanket statement. I mean, yes, there's talent on the team, but it was built lopsided. So saying it's talented is ignoring the fact that we have no offensive line and we didn't spend enough into our defensive line.
Oh yeah, and I kept criticizing the pick at wide receiver at number 9.
But we've got the best secondary in football walking into this season.
That's the one that bit you. That's the one mistake that bit you. You should have traded back. You should have picked up more offensive line. You should have picked up defensive end. That's what you should have done. Like, at the end of the day,
aren't going to help in their first year.
They sometimes do.
I mean, blaming Ryan Poles for this draft and not trading back or getting the haul or doing that much. Whatever. It's such a short window. You have to look through the whole tenure of what he was doing and what he had to work with.
Because, and I kept saying too, to Dave, like, I'm not going to forget where I was at the beginning of this season. And that's talking about how Caleb, as a first number 1 overall pick quarterback, might be walking into one of the best situations any number 1 pick has ever walked into. And that's where I was, and that's where we were. And the results tell a different story, but I think that blame is truly there.
No, because we're talking about you have to look at the other teams that were picking first overall that were drafting a quarterback. They were complete dumpster fires already.
I'm just saying I'm not completely sold out on Ryan Poles. I get what you're saying there. Like, I still have some hope, because, like, we were even touted as one of the best scouting departments during draft time. There was a lot of reports at how good their scouting was and this and that. However, it's a results-based business. But listen, over time, I'm not sure if I would I'm not about to jump off a cliff if Ryan Poles is still here. Okay. Do I feel like he's deserved it? No. Is it completely I don't know, unimaginable for me to think that he might be here next year? No, I can see him being here next year. But one thing's for sure, I've never seen a GM shorten his leash faster than Ryan Poles has.
That's an amen statement. I thought Ryan Poles was here for at least. I thought Ryan Poles was here for at least another head coach plus 3 years. I thought Ryan Poles was going to get to fire Matt Eberflus and then hire a new coach and then ride it out for at least another 2 to 3 years. That's, I think, what Paulie and I have kind of always discussed, is that a GM, a good GM, regardless of how bad the team performs, like, you can kind of predict it. Like, we're talking about Philadelphia debating on firing Nick Sirianni for a 13-4 season. Like, that's the standard of excellence that they're used to, because Howie Roseman does his job well. So, like, is Nick Sirianni or whoever the head coach is over there getting the job done. Like Howie Roseman's job is never in jeopardy. Whereas like Ryan Poles, I thought he did such a good job in the first 2 to 3 years that he would get at least a second head coach after Eberflus, plus another few years to watch like through Caleb's development.
But I always say
And-
that rebuild is the easiest part, David.
I know
a lot
you
of
said that, and
GMs
that's-
doing
I
really
agree.
well. So did Ryan.
And that's why,
Pace,
and
you
that's
know,
what
like,
I think
that
Paulie
first
is like trying
step
to
is really
trying to
easy.
explain what J2K's question about. Like what Paulie says is that, you know, why would Ryan, how did Ryan Poles like shorten his leash? Ryan Poles shortened his leash so hard that he's on the hot seat this offseason.
But how did
where,
he? You can, but how did
how
he?
did he? I think what ended up happening is his mistakes became amplified. I think maybe if everything went Ryan Poles' way, and then this is kind of like the thing where I talk about with Ben Johnson, and I think we talked about this last week when you were talking about like you considered our
you guys
comments
mentioned
about
it
Ben
earlier.
Johnson.
How
Well,
it's actually because of the other teams, man. It's because of the Chargers. It's because of the Broncos. It's because these other teams showing you they do it quicker.
You can't name more than 3 players on the Broncos or Chargers defenses, and I guarantee that. I will fucking stand by that. None of you can name 3 or more defensive players on the Chargers or on the Broncos, and that is a fact. I don't care how much football you watch, none of you can name it. So you're getting a lot more effort out of low-level players than the Bears are, who have 7, 8 players that people can name, but they suck. And so that's when you shorten your leash really, really fast. The other part of that is I think
Caleb Williams, and now he's going to get an extension. I don't see any world that Ryan Poles is a short leash.
I mean, I think that's just, I mean, depending on the media reports, like maybe you're more in tune with the actual things going in Hallis
He would have
Hall.
been
Like
fired.
we're talking about,
if they were going to get a new GM, he would have already been fired because they wouldn't have put him.
That's just objectively untrue. You can't fire
No, it's
a
not.
GM
This is
mid-season
the
with
time you're
Matt
searching for a
Eberflus.
head coach. You're not going to sit there with a lame duck GM and then get to the end of the season when everybody else has done their research and then suddenly fire the guy so you're last in line to start doing the research. They would have fired him already.
J2K, like 3 GMs have been fired mid-season in the last like 5 years. It just doesn't happen nearly as often as a head coach firing.
And
Like,
we
that's
just
an objectively incorrect statement, though.
No,
but you're
it's not.
saying it like, yes, it is, because you're saying it's like
Greg Gabriel just came out and said this very point. This very point that at this point in the season, you don't fire your GM because they're in the middle of a coaching search if their head coach was fired. It never happens. This is the part of the inside the organization that us fans don't know about. Ryan Poles is going to get like a 5-year extension or 4-year extension on his 1-year contract, and they're just waiting until they sign the head coach to make that announcement. They're not firing Ryan Poles. It's not an opinion. I'm saying I'm like 99% confident of this happening.
Which then it racks your brain why he's getting like because I don't want
because he's created an incredibly good scouting department. Because his draft picks are actually really good when you compare to other GMs. Because he got a team to have a coaching staff that was pretty decent considering they were going into a full teardown, not even a rebuild. A lot of people forget this. They go Minnesota and Chicago. They both went through a rebuild. No, Minnesota was $30 million under the cap when their GM stepped in. Ryan Poles was negative 17 million under the cap. So that's like over almost $50 million of cap difference. So he not only had to tear down the team and then a year later start the rebuild. I was telling people that this year we're still in that rebuild. And especially because now we have a rookie quarterback.
The Packers went through it too. Silently. Nobody ever mentioned the word once. They're the damn youngest team in football. They're doing the rebuild as we speak in a way. And, here they are at 10 wins.
Well, there's
Listen,
elements of the Packers
J2K,
that are
I get it,
excellent
and I would
for-
totally buy it a lot more
that
if I was a
lasted
Pittsburgh
longer
Steelers fan,
than the
and this was coming from the
rebuild.
Steelers.
This
You
is
see what I'm
other-
saying? But like,
thank you, Paulie. This
Those
is exactly where I'm going
retooling.
from.
Those aren't rebuild.
listen, I
This is-
get
A
it.
this is
tear down
I
and
would
a
buy
rebuild
it,
and a
like,
retool.
is
give
this
them
a
very, very
franchise that
different
has
cushion
done
and
this
more
in the
time
past?
for exactly. Like I watch these other organizations flip it pretty quickly, and if you're gonna sell me on time, like I said, you better be the Steelers.
Well,
I'll
you're
believe
talking
you.
about a tear down, a rebuild versus a retooling. There's
I'm
totally
talking-
different. I mean, you just say you watch teams flip it really quickly,
This team's
but
got
you're talking about teams that
4
just they
wins.
flip it because they retool. You're talking about a team that may have rebuilt for a year or two. You know, Broncos went through like a 2-year rebuild, and they're
Here's
we were
my-
sup-
here-
the
my
Vikings were supposed
question.
to be us, not us.
no, they weren't. I
Like,
never
yeah, they
bought that
were.
for a minute.
I did.
But here's my actual question for like Bears people, because J2K, like, I don't want to get too into the weeds of like who you think is in charge and who you think is an example and whatever.
And
but like,
I scream with
who are the leaders in the locker room?
J2K.
Who
I
are
love
the
you.
leaders in the coaching?
And me and David scream at each other all the time,
Mhm.
so it's nothing ever personal. I
No, it's
absolutely
not.
love
Yeah,
this,
no.
man. So
No, I
just
enjoy
throw
it.
that
This
out
has-
there. But go ahead, David.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you
yeah,
off. but I
like
just wanna get that in,
tomorrow.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
this is
absolutely
one of those
am
times where like,
enjoying this. This is great.
yeah.
So
I hope you don't actually are
Yeah.
upset because
No,
like
no,
we're
I'm-
not
no,
upset.
no,
at
no.
all.
Okay, all
Like,
right. Then go ahead, David. I don't mean to
so,
cut
like,
you off. But
okay,
yeah, who are the
so-
leaders in this locker room, right?
When you talk about like Minnesota, like it's not even a fair comparison. Like they went from Case Keenum, who never failed, to Kirk Cousins, who didn't fail there, to fucking Sam Darnold, to whoever. They never fail because there's an infrastructural integrated kind of like success system there.
God damn it!
So,
When the game
Green
last
Bay-
night played, and they showed the two states next to each other, and they go, "This rivalry, blah blah blah." I was like, "It's better than the fucking rivalry we have with the Packers."
Like
That's
right now,
more their rival.
we're talking about a team
It
with
is.
the Bears. Like, let's focus back in on the fucking Bears for a second, where the players are talking about let's have accountability from the head coach down. While when the head coach got fired, they got worse because they have no self accountability and they have no one in there who
Or
teaches
Matt
them that
Eberflus
shit.
is a really good defensive caller and a good like football mind in the room, and they
Super
fired him.
agreed. Super agreed. So it's an inmates running the asylum thing. So
Yeah.
like you talk about Brian Flores or like Ben Johnson and being like, okay, you expect Ben Johnson to walk in here? Who is Ben Johnson bringing with him? Unless Ben Johnson is bringing in fucking Frank Ragnow or some other offensive like football player with them and being like, this is the toughest motherfucker in the room. All of you need to shut the fuck up and actually follow this. Who are your leaders in the locker room right now? Your best players in the Bears locker room are DJ Moore, who can't stop complaining or talking about vacation, who's Jalen Johnson is your
that's
best
baloney.
defensive player. That's absolutely true. DJ
No, it's
Moore
not.
has
They took it out
DJ
of
Moore has-
context. They asked him, "What are you going to look
Jalen
forward to in the
Johnson-
off season?" And he said,
Jalen
"Going on
Johnson
vacation
is coming
and
out
letting
here
everybody
and
else
literally
do their
being
job."
the guy.
This is
Then-
what
then
happens
let's
with
move on.
fans.
Move
We take these
DJ
little
Moore.
news blips
Move
and we
on
go,
to
"Oh
DJ
my
Moore
god,
then.
everybody sucks."
Move on from DJ Moore then. Then let's talk about Jalen Johnson, who literally had a 15-minute absolute dive in on the head coach, talking about how the head coach can't take accountability, but
He
then the
wasn't
rest of the
in
defense
locker
can't
room.
take
He wasn't
accountability.
talking about the head coach.
What do you mean? Jalen Johnson was the famous outburst that
He
led
wasn't
to Matt
talking about
Eberflus's
the head coach. He
firing.
was talking about losing. He was specifically talking about losing. That's taken out of that's not at all what he said. He was like, "I'm tired of losing."
Then
You-
there is no. Then you know
You
what?
can make
Based on
you
what
can
you're
make
saying,
the leap
and what
of
you're
faith that
saying
he was
means
talking
that
about the
there
head
are-
coach.
There is
But
no
you guys are
leadership.
upset over rumors that
It's
aren't true.
rudderless. It's rudderless then.
But
because
it's your
then-
basis of your facts are based off of things that didn't happen,
Then
and
where
you're
are
basing your
facts
opinion
coming
and
from?
your anger over.
Are they
it.
direct sources from the players? Do the players text you?
No, Jalen Johnson went and did an interview about it and explained exactly what
Listen,
happened.
I know one thing
No,
for
but
sure.
then that's
I know
just
one
an
thing.
interview.
Hey,
So
hey,
you're
hold
DJ
on.
getting
Moore
your-
had
hold on,
a
guys,
full-on
guys.
interview where
You
they
have
cut it up
secondhand-
into a clip.
Guys,
So I watched the
You
whole
have
interview.
secondhand information the same way I do.
It's not
Guys.
secondhand. It's
My
a
information-
video camera on the
Listen,
player
guys.
And
talking.
I'm reading
This
an
isn't
article
somebody
from the
telling me this on
Athletic.
Twitter. I'm watching
And
him
I'm
talk.
reading an article from the Athletic.
Guys, listen.
Who's
I know one
making
thing.
an
I know one
No,
thing
it's
for sure.
incredibly
Both of you,
dismissive. It's
That's
incredibly
journalism.
Stop.
dismissive.
That's
right now, hold on. Listen to me. Chill out. I know one thing for sure. I know we've had, yes, Science Spy, 100%. Fantastic fucking content when you just have people screaming at each other, over each other, and not able to understand one thing. I'll go by what I know and I've heard for sure. And that's Keenan Allen coming out, talking about plays not getting called in on time. Right? Talking about a situation where against Green Bay, where a special field unit starts running onto the field and is getting waved off by the offense because Eberflus is on the wrong channel. Not letting
not
know that was what Keenan Allen said. And I have the video of it. I can pull it up for you. So I'm just taking it from a player.
I got the video too, man. And
I'm
you
just
can see
taking it from
Hightower holding up
No,
a
Paulie,
one,
what Keenan
and Cruz
Allen said
holding
is
up a
his
two.
rumor. It's a rumor.
Listen, so this is from Keenan Allen's perspective and point of view. And this is also in match with the press conference afterwards of Richard Hightower coming out and saying it. Oh, I'm pretty sure Eberflus already addressed this, which he did not. He vaguely went over it, but Richard Hightower said Eberflus was on the wrong channel in a press conference. I'll pull that clip up for you if you want it. So,
But Eberflus held up the correct number.
J2K. So what I'm saying is,
So that
it's year
doesn't make any
3.
sense, though. He held up the correct
J2K.
number.
I'm telling you,
It
it's
doesn't
year
matter what
3,
we say.
and you have
J2K knows
veterans who are clearly upset with just the basic way things are being handled, because it's a joke to them, because they've experienced other situations in this league where it's better than that. That's what we're seeing in Minnesota. It's better.
Okay, so
It's
when
what
the
we're seeing
season
in Green Bay.
started,
It's
do you
better.
remember
So
when? Can I just say something? When the
I'm
season
just
started,
finishing my point. I'm just finishing my point. Let me just finish. So this is where I go back to Vrabel.
well, now
If
you're
I
going
know,
to change the
because
topic.
no, I'm just gonna say this one thing and just let you respond, because this is where I go back to Vrabel, because if I know anything for sure, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, those are different jobs than head coach. Vrabel's shown me he can be a head coach and at least set some kind of standard, and that is what I need for this team based off the slop, based off the what was here, man. It was a joke. Yeah, so I mean, go ahead, dude.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry.
What was your previous point? What were you talking about before you went back to the coach, Vrabel?
It's the whole play calling coming in on time.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
so you remember at the beginning of the season when players came out and they're like, they went to coaches and they're like, we want to be coached harder. You know, there's a lot of this talk really early in the season about how the players felt the coaches were treating them, and it was kind of soft. The bar wasn't set high enough, all that kind of stuff. And then you hear Ryan Poles come out and say, you know, there were some issues in training camp that we didn't get a chance to kind of clean up. Now, this is me just speculating. So this, you know, not a reliable source. But I do very much think the players saw how relaxed this coaching staff was and said, you know, the bar is not set high enough for us. We're going to have, and, you know, Komet came out and it's like, you know, guys behind, you know, the doors aren't, you know, lifting as much as they should. They're not doing studying as much as they should. It's that level quality. And that was at the beginning of the season.
I go back to like the 2002, 2003 Super Bowl where there was an interview with one of the Eagles players. It was Eagles Patriots, I believe, the Donovan McNabb one. I think that's what it was. I might be mistaken, but regardless, they were saying, Matt, 2 weeks leading up to Super Bowl, media, this and that, everybody's wearing sunglasses, having fun, talking to media, this and that. Because the Patriots get off the plane, and it's just business as usual.
Right.
Stone face, straight face. Like, yeah, dude, like, that stuff matters.
Okay, and then I
It
also
does
want to
matter.
report
So,
this.
like,
Crimson
the
Diggs
tone
pointed this out earlier in the
doesn't
chat.
matter.
It's like the effort we put forth in 2022, had we put that effort forth this year, we'd actually been really scary. because when we were in a tank and we were in a rebuild, you saw a ton of effort. And that's not a whole bunch of different coaches except for, offensive coordinator and stuff. We went from Luke Getsy, who was a quarterback coach on Green Bay, to Shane Waldron, who was an offensive coordinator for 2 years and has worked with a bunch of people, and it still fell apart. So, I mean, to me, we try to blame Ryan Poles for everything, and he's just horrible, horrible, horrible. I don't think that's a clear analytic way of looking at things. There are mistakes, and I think there's a compound amount of mistakes which caused this season to be where it's at now. But there was a certain point in the season at 4-2 that, we were a decent team. Now the wheels came off, and then it turned into, a full-on dumpster fire. And now it's like even worse than that. But, you can see how quickly when a team stops buying in, how far they tank, how bad they look. So I don't have this pessimism that, next year we're not going to be any better than this year. I think this year is an outlier season because we started a transition to a whole new coaching regime at game 7, and in training camp.
I'm going to try to keep it as recent to what you're saying as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody's blaming Ryan Poles for 100% of the season. I would say it's 40-40-20. 40% on the coaching staff, 40% on the players, and 20% on Ryan Poles. So I don't think anybody's sitting here.
I like that. I would have to agree. I'd have to agree. 40-40-20. That makes sense.
You're overreacting and
simple.
Okay, then I guess nothing I say matters.
All
so
right.
No, don't get offended.
Yeah,
I'm just responding.
I mean, I don't know what else I can possibly say because I'm trying to.
The thing is that 20%
respond to what J2K is saying. So maybe it's 99.4% on the players, 50.44%.
Or just skip the percentage and you can get to your point.
But you're not letting me, because then you're completely immediately dismissing what I just said, which is to try to actually meet you in the middle here. So you don't want me to meet you in the middle here. You just want to debunk.
All right, meet him in the middle.
What I'm saying.
All right.
You're not actually interested in.
All right. Meet him in the middle.
What I'm saying is now that where you're at with the 40% of the coaching staff actually being irrelevant at this point, because I think can we agree Thomas Brown and the staff of coaching here at this point is actually irrelevant. None of them are going to be here to move forward. None of them are going to be relevant in the sense of building the team moving forward. In terms of the players don't matter until there's a coaching staff in place, because you install a coaching staff. Some of them are going to go. Some of the players that you like are not going to be here with a new coaching staff. And then some of the players that you don't think are going to be here are going to be starters.
Because it's hard to judge the talent accurately. It's hard to judge the talent accurately.
So now that you removed 40% of the coaching staff, so you're talking about 100% of the team. I'm not even putting any percentage towards George McCaskey or the ownership group of what is actually relevant in terms of this team building process. So we're talking about some of its players, some of it is coaching, some of it is GMing, all of that stuff. I'm giving all 100% to those three actual categories that matter. So coaching is irrelevant at this point until you hire a new coaching staff. Well, the coaching staff is going to be completely dictated on who the GM is. So if your GM is still here from the last coaching staff and they have zero track record, this is part of the problem. The last 3 coaching searches headed by this ownership and GM group have resulted in Shane Waldron, Luke Getsy, and Matt Eberflus. That is your track record as a GM in terms of finding a coaching staff. So if you want to bank on that GMing group finding your next head coach, be my fucking guest. Because the last guys that these guys hired as an ownership group and as a GM group, they do not know what the difference is between interviewing Liam Cohen and interviewing Cliff Kingsbury and interviewing Shane Waldron. And they walk out of that room going, you know what? The best guy in that room was Shane Waldron. And the best guy in that room was Luke Getsy. And the best guy out of Dan Quinn and Leslie Frazier and Matt Eberflus was Matt Eberflus, then I have zero. Your track record speaks for itself. You do not know what you are looking for. So whether or not you this time now, okay, you know what? I'm going to look at it completely different. You're back on hope. What Paulie talks about. You don't want to bank on hope. You're back on hope. You hope that they learn their lesson. You hope that they fucked up so hard 3 times that on the 4th time they learn their lesson.
Meeting you in the middle, J2K.
All right, so first off,
listen. Before you respond,
time
real
out.
quick, I just want to comment on this now. Just poke the bear until this evolves into a drunken Polish game of poker after midnight. Man, like I've been getting on that Red Dead Redemption 2, and I love playing Texas Hold'em in that game. Unfortunately, with all the spicy content you guys are giving us tonight, man, I'm gonna have a lot of editing to do here because this is good, man. So. Sorry to cut you off, J2K, but I feel like, I don't know, I want to give you guys a little pause between each other. So,
well, I mean, you don't have to. So first off, meeting me in the middle, it doesn't.
Yeah, that
make
was
sense.
not
Just
meeting you in the
respond.
middle
Just let me
whatsoever.
respond.
Yeah,
I just
right.
wanna respond.
I'll agree with you there. I don't think he met you anywhere close to the middle.
No, that's not my point. That's not what I'm saying. Just let me respond. Actually, so what I'm saying is that meeting me in the middle. Now, this isn't like I don't want to be agreeable and say, oh, okay, let's
don't have to
just be
Yell back at
cordial in this discussion.
This is
I want
great,
to
man.
actually bring up my opinion and listen to Dave's opinion.
I'll even
And if I
remove
agree,
myself.
I agree. If I disagree, I disagree. And I think Dave makes very good points. And when I do disagree with something, it doesn't mean I disagree with everything. So I would push back a little bit on the head coaching hires just because Ryan Poles hired these coaches during and going into an absolute teardown. So you like, who wants to actually come here and be a coach for the Chicago Bears, knowing they're minus 17 million in cap space, knowing that they don't have draft picks because they were all traded away. So you just have a limited pool. That's why a QB coach from Green Bay became our offensive coordinator, because we didn't have anybody else interested. That's why Matt Eberflus, who possibly was going to get fired from the Colts, who let their entire defensive staff go once Flus went, became our head coach. We were never in a position to get quality coaching at that time.
Make my point in that statement, though, because
how do you
the last 2 coordinators under Mike Vrabel have been Arthur Smith and Matt LaFleur. And I heard he didn't even get along with Matt LaFleur.
He fired him after a year because he wasn't any good there. Maybe the guy learned, but the guy who's going to bring back most likely is going to be Tim Kelly.
Listen,
who's Tim Kelly, guys?
I have more faith in Mike Vrabel being able to get quality coaches here under him more than I have with a lot of the other candidates. And it's why when like Pete Carroll's name came up and I asked David, I just texted him like, what do you think of this? Because listen, I've never personally been a Pete Carroll fan. However, I respect the experience and the establishment he has in this league. Do I want him here? No, I don't. Because I think I think the age thing is a part of it. I do. I don't. But like, would he do some things better than, say, maybe Ben Johnson or Brian Flores? Yes. I totally believe more that Pete Carroll is way more established than it goes to guys, because he is. Because he has the experience, because he's shown it. Mike Vrabel's shown me that he took a Titans team with a quarterback that was on his second team, that was kicked off his first team, and had these guys overachieve, make the playoffs 3 years in a row. Even the first year they won a couple games. People are like, oh, well, he just leaned on the run game, Derrick Henry. Hell, if I had Derrick Henry, I'd lean on the run game too. Like, at the end of the day, this guy, I know, lives, eats, breathes, sleeps football. It's what he's wired to do because he's done it for the last how many years? He played the damn game. He played in a respectful organization that won. He's had experiences of success and how it's done and what you have to do and the type of demeanor and attitude and effort you have to put forward. When Matt Nagy got here and he said the first thing we have to do is have fun, I said, oh my God, this is trash. Because that's the last thing. Listen, it's business, man. It's a business.
Really?
And so, like,
Nagy
there's
came
certain.
in and
Listen,
he
I'm
actually
telling you,
said he
J2K.
needed
So
to
for
show
me,
anger
there's
face.
just a lot on the checklist, a lot of things on the checklist that I'm way more comfortable in with Mike Vrabel than I am with these other guys. And same with you. It's not to say that like the points you're making about these other guys or whatever are just to be dismissed. No, sure, I get them. There's something to be said about everyone, but I keep leaning on the most conservative option in this situation. Like I said, because I feel like we've gambled with the pick. Like I feel like there's enough talent on this team to where it just create like have the fucking calls come in on time. So the guys can just do what they do.
Let me simplify this. So, like you're saying, like the coaching pool was limited going into this team and whatever. So
Right.
that was a 3-13 team. This is a 4-13 team. What is the difference?
Because we're not in a tear or going into a
One
tear
game
down,
because
the next,
the season's
the next,
increased. No, I'm kidding. That was a math joke. I'm a nerd. 3-13, 4-13. No, okay, never mind. Sorry, J2K. I'm sorry.
Because because we were going into a tear down. We didn't have draft picks. We were 17 million minus in the cap. We're walking into next year with a first overall draft pick of a quarterback who I think everybody can say that's probably the only actual bright spot of this team right now is the future with Caleb Williams. You've also got almost I think it's like 80 or 90 million in cap space, which can be turned into probably about another 10, 15 million with a couple obvious cuts. You've got a first, 2 seconds, and if Ian Cunningham gets a GM job, there's 2/3. So you've got things that are available in this toolbox that you didn't have when Ryan Poles started this process.
So the things that you just listed as availabilities is the potential of Ian Cunningham leaving and the
That's just a
established
bonus.
culture. Okay, fine. So let's knock that off because that doesn't matter then. So
it does if he does get a GM job.
No, because you just all right, whatever.
It's a potential. It's not the whole hit and caboodle.
Okay, but then so what is the difference? You have Ryan Poles with an established 3 years of what? What has he established in 3 years?
So
that makes you feel better about.
So that's the thing. So that's the thing.
As a head coach,
it's like there's some obvious decisions and moves that have been made. Like, to be honest with you, you traded the number 1 overall pick to Carolina. I think most GMs in the league would have been able to pull that one off. I really do.
Well, I want to hear what Dave's point is.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut him off, but whatever. I will. So I think you get another number 1 overall pick. I think most GMs in the league in this situation are doing what he did, right? So like outside those 2 moves, when you look at a lot of the moves that Ryan Poles has made, the track record isn't good. It starts off with almost signing that linebacker Ogunjobi,
Larry Ogunjobi,
who failed a physical and allowed you to retract that contract, and then Pittsburgh signed him for what, a quarter of the
league
price?
Minimum.
No, not league minimum. It was still a couple million, but a quarter of the price that you were about to sign him for.
And you started there ever since.
Okay, so you got saved from yourself. There was the Chase Claypool move. Like the Montez Sweat moves seem to have worked out, but man, people warned them. People warned them about
moves, but I can't debate them with you guys because I don't want to interrupt. But I disagree.
But
I disagree on the Larry.
Okay, then give me 30 more seconds, and I'll let you respond.
Didn't pass the physical. Another team went and said, "Okay, we're going to pay you league minimum even though you've got a concern.
That's exactly what I said.
A
Yes,
health concern, right?
that's exactly
So
what
why
I
is
said.
that on polls? Why?
Because
you know,
because you wanted to sign him for 4 times more than what a good, respectful, historically respectful, and sound
his
organization
play
wound
was
up
worth
doing.
the contract. He failed a
It
physical.
would have bit us. J2K is what I'm saying. So because
but how
he
is
kind of got
Poles
saved from
responsible for that?
because he got saved
Because
from
he has a professional scouting department and
he
actual
wanted to
doctors
make that
on his
move.
staff that know those
like-
moves. And if
just
that,
like I'm
and
going to
if your
hold him
staff,
accountable for trying
and
to
if your
trade up.
doctors do not know that
Yeah,
that is his injury history or his
It wasn't an
actual
injury
contract
history.
dispute.
Listen. So J2K, it's more than one
So
thing.
a fracture in your
but you're-
bone from the season, something that shows up
You're-
on a medical report when you go and do a physical.
You're
It
really
may not have been there
creating-
during his career, and the player may not even know about it.
You're creating
That-
a roadblock and a wall from the first of maybe 2025 bad decisions.
Well, but I'm trying to discuss the bad decisions, but
I'm just
you
saying.
know-
So at the end of the day, the point is that there's a lot of things that haven't gone well.
see, I don't-
Starting
see,
from
that's
step one
where I
all the way
disagree,
through.
But
There's
I can't
some things
disagree
that have
because-
gone well. There's some things that have gone well, but these mistakes are adding up. You can't deny that.
I can because
Okay.
So Ryan Poles is the best GM in football on a
about
4-13
Poles.
team.
We talked
I
about
get your
the
point.
players.
So Ryan Poles is the best GM in football with a 4-13
No, that's a
team.
fallacy
That's the
argument.
point.
Just because I'm defending the guy after 3 years of questioning him doesn't somehow make me say he's like the greatest GM. I mean, come on.
Yes,
dude.
you are.
That's a
because
totally
Paul
fallacy
just said that
argument.
there's no, it's not. You're being fallical because Paul said that there's a multiple list of things that have not gone perfect, and you said no, there's not.
And then
No,
the
I
problem
said
is
that there's
That's
individual
your
things I would
exact words. We can
disagree with,
rewind
and I
30
would
seconds,
discuss
and you
those
can
things.
say no. You could rewind 30 seconds, and you said no, that's not true.
Because it was a blanket
Paul's-
statement. I don't agree with the premise of the
Listen,
blanket statement.
listen. You want me to
That doesn't
defend
mean
Ryan
I-
Poles?
Then
I
he's a
will.
good
disagree with every
GM.
aspect
So then
of
he's
it.
a good GM.
No,
I'm
I
not
think
saying that. That's too much of a blanket statement. That's the fallacy I think we live under. Is whether they're good or they're bad. And right now, everybody hates Poles, so he's bad. Everything he's ever done is bad,
because it's
and I disagree
result-based.
with that.
We
we
just
couldn't
sat
kick
here for 20
because
minutes
we
talking about
couldn't
how it's not
kick.
all his fault, and then you didn't agree with that either.
Well, no,
though.
see, that's a fallacy argument. I'm not saying that. You're making like one point I have
none of
about
it's his
Larry
fault.
and Joby.
all of it
suddenly
is his
he's
fault,
the-
and neither
He's
of
the
them are
worst.
true.
You know,
Correct. Agreed.
I'm arguing that he's the greatest GM in all of football because
This
I
is gonna
disagree.
be.
Neither
that,
are we.
This is going to be.
well, I'm
to
not
be
saying you are. You're
continued
saying
next
I
week,
am.
man,
That's the
because
fallacy.
This is
I'm not
spicy,
saying
man.
that you guys are 100%
I think you need
anti.
to re-Google fallacy.
Better than a Channel 5 1 p.m. soap opera right here.
I think you need to reevaluate your definition of fallacy.
Guys,
Fallacy is to create a fallacious argument based on one blanket statement of everything. We're literally trying to argue nuance with you, and you're not having it at all.
No, I want to debate the nuance, and I keep getting these.
No,
blanket
you're
statements.
not. You're objectively not trying to debate nuance whatsoever.
I wanted
You
to
are
talk about the
no,
Larry
you're
and
not.
Joby
No,
thing.
no, you're not. You are
This is-
objectively not trying to debate nuance
Well, I
while we
disagree.
are, and then you are saying that you are being the nuanced statement in this room while we are trying to debate nuance, and then you
Okay.
come out and
All right,
respond to
then
every
let me
listen,
respond to
hey,
Dave.
or
Let me
no.
respond to
get
Dave.
it back
and
to
then
football.
you act like
Let
I
me
don't know
respond
what
to
I'm
Dave.
talking
hey,
about.
listen. I started the show by
Let me-
saying David personally offended you, questioned your character.
No, that never.
By
it
the
was
end
an
of this
issue.
show,
you guys are
he
making it
definitely
something
has.
it's not. Now it's.
I'm
now
not.
guys are-
And David, I
well,
think
then-
you're taking it
then
out
let
of
me
context.
respond
too.
to Dave.
Let him respond and just chill out
Go for it.
because it's
So,
fine.
when
I'll
you
even
said,
take
what's
a
the difference
hypothetical,
between-
man, so whatever.
So, Dave, when you said, "What is the difference between us being 3-13 versus 4-13?" I gave like specific, nuanced responses on the difference. Right? Cap space, quality of players, Caleb Williams, draft picks. Right? So I just want to I'm trying to say to you that like my intention is to discuss the
Those are not
nuance
specifics.
thing.
If you want to be specific,
So
then
that's why
not specific.
that's why I went back and I said, here's the obvious moves that most GMs would have made. Now let's go back to step one. And step one, there was a little hiccup there, but he kind of got saved from himself. And J2K, really wanted to dive deep into that, but like, no, like, let's just move past because it's more of a broad picture. Like he's been here 3 years, so like I want to move past step one, which is Larry Ogunjobi, who didn't even get signed here. But like I said, because he failed his physical, that could have been a potential failure. Dude, I agree with the Roquan Smith move. Roquan Smith, not signing him to top money. You got TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds in here for a comparable amount, and they've produced a lot. And like the problem is, you look at like the third round draft picks, they're all failures. You look at the second round draft picks, dude, Tyreek Stevenson literally helped implode this season. J2K, you even mentioned it at the beginning of this episode that there's been like this unorthodox outside in approach to building. And so it was hard to deny the production that was coming out of the defense last year because they were getting all those turnovers last year. However, this year, it's a different story. So, it's hard to argue against it when it's working, but it's not working now. So now you have these draft picks and all this draft capital that you've invested into what's been the 32nd defense in the last 8 weeks. That's a tough hill to climb and a tough position to defend. And I get where you're coming from, which is, I think, more of a long-term overview approach. You're right. I don't think Ryan Poles is all that bad either. And I always say, like, a GM is just 50-50. You hit 50% of the time, and you're fine. And Ryan Poles may be just that, but it's gotten real bad real fast. And that's the concern. Like I said, he's shortened his leash so much, so quick. And it seems like every week, it's only getting worse for Ryan Poles. It's only looking worse. And so some of this stubbornness, and David brought it up a couple weeks ago, it's this arrogance, the fact that you didn't even interview other people. And I get there's a lot to be made for keeping Eberflus and whatnot, but like there's a lot of arrogance here that like I hate thinking that we're the smartest people in the room. I do. And there's been that lately. And there wasn't that at first. At first, he came in here and turned 6 picks into 11 picks. We need to rebuild and this and that. But like it got to a point this year where they thought they were in win now mode, treated this as win now mode, and we're bottom of the division, scrapping at scraps. And so like the evaluation versus the result is so drastically off to where even being a guy who likes Ryan Poles, I have to take a couple steps back and look at this and be like, man, this was not handled properly. It was not executed on the field well. The coaches that were in place, the coordinators that we went and got, this was all not the right moves to make. And it goes up to the GM position as like, dude, like this draft was handled poorly. These decisions were handled poorly. And so I guess this is the whole thing. And we're going to wrap this up soon because at the end of the day, like you're right, J2K, he's going to get extended. I totally agree with you there. That's what's about to happen. Why though? Like, and I get you're trying to argue for why. There's a lot more to argue for why not. And I think you could look at both sides of it. You know what I mean? And you can make an argument for either side. And I'm with you there. I can too. But when I look at it as like a Venn diagram, there's a lot more piling up on the why not side, which makes me concerned, which makes me take a step back, which makes me say, why are you going to even limit the potential of, even if there's just one coach out there who wants to bring a GM with him, you're now not even allowing that to be an option? Because why? Because you're going to stick by Ryan. But like, I just don't think he's earned it. He's not terrible. He may be very well average right now. He may potentially be good in the future. Time tells a lot more tales than, just 1 year or whatever. But like, so far, it's taken a turn for the worst. And I don't think you can argue that at the end of the day. Like, it's taken a turn for the worst. Guys, are we all done for tonight?
No, I would like to respond. I'm just waiting for you to finish your monologue.
No, I was finished. Sorry. I mean, I want to bring it back down to earth.
So, okay. So I like to talk about the nuances, right? And a lot of what you said, Paul, I respect your opinion. I respect you being a podcaster. I think you're talking to the people. I think a lot of what you say is kind of what the people are saying, so to speak. I think a lot of people like hear what you're saying and they agree to it.
Yeah. Because if you ask me what like my true opinions were, they'd be way more cutthroat than that. But okay, for sure.
Or no, what I'm saying is that I'm fine with that type of an opinion. I don't think that every football fan needs to be as nuanced as every other football fan out there. There's no wrong way to be a fan of your team. So however you present your ideologies and how you would grade this team and who's at fault or who do you praise, all that kind of stuff. I really do respect that. I personally do enjoy talking about the nuance things, the things that all the individual things. So when I hear someone say like, oh, well, we can all agree on XYZ, and I don't, but it's a sweeping overall concept, it's obviously all gone wrong. It's all bad, which is a fallacy argument, a sweeping overall just opinion about something where the baby and the bathwater get thrown out, right? I like to discuss the nuance aspects. So when I say I disagree, it may be a nuanced aspect to what you're saying, not the overall thing. So I'm not saying Ryan Poles is great, and it's very odd being in this position where I feel like I'm the lone guy on the hill defending Ryan Poles' positive moves in his career, when I was the lone man on the hill saying, where is all this optimism coming from? And, I just switched hills. And that's, the fans are still around me saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think it's evidence that I did call him out originally as building outside in before everybody else said that. And now everybody's using that very terminology. And Dave, like, no disrespect to you at all. I know this has been a tough conversation. I don't want you to feel that this is any way personal or that, me disagreeing with aspects of your opinion on how to fix the Chicago Bears is an opinion on you by any means. I think we all want the same thing. We all want the Chicago Bears to be better. And we all look for how would we have done it differently. We look into the past. Hindsight's 2020, but we all sit there and we grade Ryan Poles and Eberflus and everything under the sun. And we all do that. So,
I put all my opinions in this realm, dude. If either of us were that smart, we'd both be working for NFL franchises. So I'm not smart at all. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, because if I did, I'd be working in the front office of an NFL franchise. So don't worry, I'm good. Like, you won't hurt my feelings. I'm very aware of how stupid I am on football and how I'm hindsight is 2020. So don't.
Well, I hope I'm not giving you that impression that because we disagree that I think you don't have a good point and you guys aren't supporting the point. And that's the other thing. Like, when we talk this in the green room about like having these kind of fun debates and stuff. Like, I think you guys make a fantastic argument for Ryan Vrabel. So, I for one would be happy if he was the head coach. I would point to all the things that you've said to support your argument as, fantastic reasons to support that hire. So I'm in full agreement. There's little nuances I'd push back, and I would do that on any of the three of my top candidates,
Guys, we're going to end this. I mean, we usually go an hour 15, hour 30. This is probably the longest live Monday show we've had yet. So we're going to come to a conclusion here. I don't know if you guys want to give one more closing statement real quick or not, but if not, then I will. But Dave, anything final?
No. Not at all. I feel super.
J2K.
This argument has felt supremely stupid as fuck, and I feel.
Oh, people
bad.
loved it. Thigh and
I feel
Smize.
bad.
I think Thigh and Smize is gonna be a new subscriber now. I think we
Carl
finally
is
hooked
just
him.
fucking like puppeteering.
Oh,
some
he's loving
trolling
this. He's
shit.
trying to stir the pot, talking about.
Carl's an asshole. He
I
can
know. I
suck
love
my
it.
ass.
I love it though. It's great. He's playing the position perfectly.
Carl
I
can
can't hate
suck
him on
my
it.
ass. And I love
J2K.
Carl.
Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think when we do this, we talk live on air. I think what you're seeing is us having these kind of debates that we might have, in an office, about football, or as friends at a bar or social hangout or whatever. We may disagree, but there's a reason why we're talking together, and I hope that doesn't get lost in the discussion tonight. I actually thought that it was a very fun debate, and I actually really enjoyed it. Dave, I feel like I've worn you out to an extent, that you're kind of sitting there going like, oh my gosh, like
Dave's asshole.
No, but he's just at some point, we could, when you disagree and you don't agree to disagree, you just keep disagreeing, right? So
I had to
I don't
ring
want
the
you
bell
guys
a couple
to feel
times. I had to be like, step back in the
worn
corner.
out by this, but I agree with you guys far more than I think you
Like
guys
you
may
said,
feel.
it's your top 3 option, J2K, and I get it.
Yeah, and Vrabel's one of
This
them.
is why I brought you on,
Absolutely.
to argue
Right.
tooth and nail about the other options, because me and you went at it for what, 3 hours?
Right.
So this was my plan all along, David, was to wear you out.
No, well, I hope not, but and I could be more agreeable to be more agreeable, but I don't want my opinion to suffer because of we're to be afraid to disagree with other people. I want to be as honest and upfront with everybody with what I think and what I feel and know. Having said that, Dave is right. We aren't these football savants who have worked in the NFL. We know everything going behind closed doors, so I can be just as right or wrong as Dave is. So I don't want to try to carry on some trophy that I'm somehow some genius football savant, and no one else knows what they're talking about. Cough, cough, Chris Foster.
Of course he sees it, Chris. Listen, J2K, we've said it from day one, man. We would just have conversation. We actually have these screaming matches,
right,
with each other over the phone. Right, David? I mean, this is nothing new. So like, we're just sharing this with everybody. But yeah, this is just natural for us. And the reason, though, why I absolutely love doing these shows is because it gets it out there and it gets it on paper. And you know what? It's funny because Dave, yesterday I sent you this tweet. You said something about hindsight, and I said it's not hindsight when you saw it coming all the way. You know what I mean? And so I think that's part of our issue. It's because like, dude, people are predicting this team as double-digit wins. We didn't even go that high. We went 9-8, and it's even failed that. We knew this coaching staff was a failure. Just waiting for the time bomb to explode. And it's just like, so I love that we get our opinions out there and we share them with everybody. And because we could go back on it and we could talk about what we wanted. And like I said, hindsight is hindsight, but if you're calling the shots in the moment, then you go back on it and you go, okay, but that's why I was saying this fucking sometimes Occam's razor, right, David? Sometimes the most obvious thing is the right thing, and that seems to pop up over and over. So J2K, thank you for your time tonight. Dave, thank you for your time tonight. Chat, awesome. Thank you everybody for watching, and let's it'll be over by 3 p.m. on Sunday. So right, it's a new game. Just get through this. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.